All right. And now we're good to go. We are. All right. What's up, Ed? Good to go.
All right. Hey guys, my name is Faisel Mahmud, and I'm going to be talking about like day-to-day life of being a data analyst. So this is just a personal background. I'm not actually from here. I went to UC Santa Cruz for 4 years, graduated with BA in business management economics, minored in mathematics. Currently working as a data analyst at AgWest Farm Credit. Yeah, I'm experienced with machine learning statistics, specifically like regression techniques, so like simple linear regression, logistic regression, and also querying with SQL. I have knowledge in SQL, T-SQL, relational database management systems, Power BI, SQL Server Management Studio, SSRS, etc. So yeah, just a little bit about the company. We are essentially just like a lending company. We lend like loans to farmers all across this area right here. We're part of like the farm credit system. It's like a nationwide network of lending institutions specifically focused in like agriculture. We help fund like hundreds of commodities. So that's just a little bit about the company. Okay, so now here's like the main part, the common responsibilities of a data analyst. Really the main universal thing as a data analyst, and this is pretty much for like anywhere that you work in, is that we have to make sense of data to internal and external customers and pointing out like the positive or negative trends for like continuous improvement of the company or organization that you're working at. We generate queries to retrieve data depending on the department. There can be departments that ask for like specific information, so it's your job to be able to know how to retrieve it, where to look for, and give it to them as needed. Sometimes, depending on your assignment or what you need to do, you'll have to create visualizations, and this is there's like dashboarding software such as like Power BI, which is like the main one that we use. Pretty much everything at AgWest, we use like Microsoft products. So really the only like visualization tool that we use is Power BI, but there exists like other ones such as Tableau, and even like Google has their own like dashboarding system as well. But yeah, no, pretty much the main like responsibility of being a data analyst is being able to retrieve and like manage data for like anyone that asks for it. Yeah, no, and the one thing that's important to note as well is just because like this is like the main responsibility, it does like you could do this exact same thing as either a data engineer or a data scientist. It really all just depends on what the company needs. It's not specifically like all of these job functions aren't necessarily delegated to a data analyst. You could be doing the same stuff as like a data scientist. You could be asked to do machine learning as a data analyst. It really just depends on what the company needs at that point. So yeah, these are like the necessary like skill requirements. Notice I put on the top like the soft skills because they're extremely important to being a data analyst. If you think of yourself as like analytical, if you enjoy like problem solving, and also I think another way to like look at it is like, do you enjoy like sort of like solving puzzles? Because it really just feels like that if you work as a data analyst. Making sense of numbers and like explaining it and just really understanding like the big picture of everything and being able to explain that, as I've said earlier, is like sort of the main focus as a data analyst. You also want to have like good communication. Depending on who you're reporting to, you're going to want to be able to communicate your results in an effective way. And if there are any questions about it, you should be able to answer it. Yeah, critical thinking skills, you will like come across a lot where there's like a bug, or it's like, you know, you'll be stuck on like a, you know, a query that's just not working, or you're building a report that just, it is not like working, you know, and you have to be able to adapt to that and find new ways around the problem. It's very, very dynamic, so you won't be necessarily using the same approach for solving things for each assignment. So that's something to keep in mind. And I guess also most of the jobs you'll see like on LinkedIn or Indeed or whatever you use to try and find a job, they'll expect you to have like a 4-year degree, like BA or BS in like computer science, physics, economics, and it really, yeah, you don't necessarily just need to be like a CS major to do like data analytics. as I've said before, I was business management economics. I just really liked this, so that's why I did this. Yeah, no, so also getting familiarized with data visualization software like the ones that I've just mentioned, and also data cleaning. So like, how would you handle like null values? Does it make sense to like replace null values with another thing? And just making it more readable for everyone if they decide to like build reports, because it's not necessarily just data analysts that like look into these systems. You could have like business analysts or even people like in marketing. It really just like, again, depends on the company. So yeah, so like I've already said, familiarization with the different software. So like SQL Server, Power BI, Tableau, SQL Server reporting services. We use SAP Business Objects as a external data vendor. They help provide some of the reports as well. And also I've noticed, I mean, this was just from like personal research, some companies, when they do ask for like machine learning, like you have like some understanding of like what you're trying to accomplish using machine learning, so like some of the statistical methods, and I guess sort of your approach in like in trying to solve a problem with machine learning. So that's also just another thing to keep in mind. General tips, this is really from like personal experience, and this is what I did to become a data analyst. Practice working with all sorts of data. Practice on your own. There are like repositories that are online that have like free data sets that you can use. A really popular one that I used was the UCI machine learning repository, but also data.gov. So like the government holds like data on different things. You can try analyzing that. Practice your skills using like SQL and Python, and whether you want to be like a machine learning engineer or data scientist, get familiar with working with enterprise level data. So yeah, mastering SQL and Python is like excellent when it comes to machine learning and like also data migration. You might come across that. At least for us, that's what we have done, where it's like we have to move like data from like one area and integrate it within our database systems. And that's just personally for me. But SQL is pretty much like the universal language when it comes to operating in databases. So structured query language, get familiar with it. And then also, yeah, you could, I got like professional certificates using Coursera. I also use like other things like Udemy. And if money is tight, you don't necessarily have to go that route. You could go to like, use free resources like Codecademy. I also learned from like YouTube tutorials as well, just like really sitting down and like taking notes on like some of the really important concepts that you need to learn when you're a data analyst. But yeah, money isn't necessarily a restriction for me to learn data science. Also something to mention, some people go for their masters as well. If you have the ability to, and it's like if you really are passionate and want to like learn it more in school, go and do your masters. I know even Sac State offers like a master's program in data science, so if you feel like that's the route for you, go do it. There's not necessarily one way of becoming a data analyst or a scientist or a machine learning engineer. It really just depends on like how much you practice and ultimately how much you know. Okay, so yeah, one thing that I'm not sure if they emphasize here at Sac State, because I don't think they emphasized it at UC Santa Cruz, at least when I was learning about like, I guess like tabular data, is like the importance of domain knowledge. So like really understanding like the industry that you're in. It is so important to understand like the company that you're working for, like what are the types of problems that they're trying to tackle, because it just makes everything so much easier. You have a very clear picture in your head of like, okay, this is the problem they're trying to solve. It would make sense to look here. We can think of like, and like, let me give an example, right? If we're trying to do like a machine learning model, right? And we want to select fields, right? Just like having that domain knowledge, you'll have an idea of what to look for. It's not enough really to just feed data into a machine learning model or just start analyzing data. You should have like a logical like business strategy whenever you're trying to tackle on these problems. And also you ultimately become a better analyst as well. You know what you're doing and you know what you're looking for. And for me personally, I honestly believe that like having domain knowledge is just as equally as important as knowing how to like query or knowing how to build a machine learning model. So yeah, the data science process. There's 5 steps, and this isn't like a universal thing, but pretty much like people who do work in data, they all work together, and just this is how like they solve problems. First, you have to define the question, and this usually comes from like domain knowledge, or it's like maybe your boss will know like more about like what problems will need to be solved, so he just assigns it to you. So yeah, so defining the question is really like the first step whenever you're trying to tackle on a problem. Then data collection, whether it be through building like an ETL pipeline to retrieve data from an external data source, or if it's already in sort of some sort of data warehouse or data lake, being able to retrieve the data, and that comes after you understand like where data is located or what you're supposed to be looking for. That's when you would start collecting data, and then after that you would do your exploratory data analysis. Sorry, before that you also need to like clean up your data. Like as I said that briefly before, so like whether it's like getting rid of null values or aggregating or even joining with other tables if it's like if that's what you're looking for. And then after that, yeah, then comes the data analysis. So you would use like the visualization tools, as I've mentioned, to sort of illustrate your data and being able to explain it to like coworkers or upper level management. And then after that, sort of the data interpretation, and it's sort of like the step where it's like we say, okay, how can we use this to predict like future behavior, right? So that's where really machine learning comes in, right? And an example of this really would be like modeling consumer behavior. So like from the exploratory data analysis we conducted, so what models can we now start to think of building? So these are examples of like the real projects that I have done. These aren't all of them, but I'm not allowed to talk about all of them. So the really big one that I've been working on is moving like data from one relational database management system called Microsoft Access and moving it into our main system, which is SQL Server Management Services, or SQL Server Management Studio, SSMS. And then from there, I was designated a database where to actually put all of that data into it, and then from there, start building the tables that reflect the data from the other relational database management system from Access. And yeah, like we're all working, it's called like the treasury project at least at my job. We're all doing separate things, but this has been really the main thing that I've been working on. When I first started, one of the big things that I had to work on was a Power BI visualization of like key financial information and like sort of marking the trends like day to day of like, okay, like loan volume, has it gone up or down, like within the and it's supposed to be refreshed every day, right? Another thing that I've been doing was QA testing. So we're trying to implement a new server, and we have to make sure that the values match with our current server, because otherwise our data vendor needs to go and fix it. So I've been like testing probably like 30, 40 fields, and basically what happens is I have to write up these queries and then like join it with something else. So for example, let's say they're asking me about like customer numbers, right? So I'll like find the customer numbers and maybe I might join it with like with like financial balances or whatever, right? So I group them with each of the customer numbers, and then I would put in our filters that we're interested in. So some of our filters that we care about were like if the account is still active, that was one of them, or if it's like a specific loan type that we're looking for. And then compare it with this other environment, right? And then see if those numbers match up, and if there's any discrepancies, then that field doesn't pass. That's basically like the whole like process of like QA, at least in my job. Let's see. Yeah, I've had to create like reports for marketing with monitoring address changes. Our marketing department sends stuff out to like customers and stuff, so they need to know if like any customers have changed their addresses. So I built up a report, and it was based off like of a stored procedure that I built, where basically you're able to input any 2 dates and then see okay, which customers have had any address changes essentially. And then also I did one on like stored procedure metadata. So basically we have like, we want to calculate how fast these like functions are working. So I did like a time series analysis that basically we were seeing all of like the functions that we had in one specific database and just kind of noting any changes like throughout the month if there was any like difference or any huge differences in like the averages. I'm not sure if I've mentioned it already, but database management is part of like the job, at least for me. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about data warehousing and ETLs. So data warehousing and also ETL. So first, ETL is it's an acronym which stands for extract, transform, load, where it's like you extract data from an external data source, you transform it, and then you load it into your database system. The data warehouse is sort of the core layer where data analysts or business analysts will actually like select data from. It's sort of the access layer where it's like you're able to start building reports. So as I've already said, we're responsible for moving and migrating data using usually like an ETL pipeline that either is already built or it's like we have to build it. So data in the data warehouse is usually organized into what's called a star schema. So this is what it looks like right here. Basically, the thing that you see in the center is called a fact table. And a fact table is basically just a table with a bunch of numbers that don't really mean much. So for example, like you might have like, again, like financial balances or like principal balances or like other financial information. It doesn't really tell you that much, right? It's like, yeah, you can see like the numbers and stuff, but like it's not really insightful. So we have like these dimensions that are surrounding this fact. So when we start like doing things like joining the tables, we can see like, okay, we can get more insightful or more meaningful insights of the data. So like, for example, this customer right here, like how much, so not only let's find like all the numbers, so like the financial balances or principal balances, but like let's also include like other stuff. So like where does he live or whatever, right? Again, it really just all depends on what you're looking for, what you're assigned to look for. And then when dimension tables, sometimes we want to, what is it called? We want to denormalize them. So what happens is like, maybe we want to make it even more simple. We want to eliminate data redundancy. So therefore, we would break out these dimension tables into sub-dimensional tables. And at least in our company, we just have one star schema, at least in our new solution. So yeah, that's just a little bit about like data warehousing and ETLs.
Question. You have one schema for the entire company?
So for one database, I guess our boss was talking to us about like how we have just one really, really big star schema. It's just one star. From personal experience, as I've said before, the job is very dynamic. It's really rare that it's like you'll use the same approach. And again, like what you might be asked might be extremely complicated or it might be really easy. The good thing about like, if you want to be a data analyst, there's a lot of different industries that actually use it. One that I've done a little bit more research on was like healthcare, but it also extends into like, finance, entertainment, retail. And also, this was something that I just looked up. This was just a simple Google search. The expected growth rate of data analysts is projected to grow from 23% from 2023 to 2031. So, and also if it's like you just enjoy like really like writing scripts or like retrieving data or like creating meaningful insights, then definitely I would consider like applying to be a data analyst. So yeah, and that's all I have.
So you spoke about the job prospects, you spoke about your daily responsibilities.
Yeah.
But if you don't mind me asking, I know you and I spoke about a project you worked on in the past, and it was about predicting whether or not someone will be paying their dues, depending on past data.
On loan default.
Yes.
Yeah, that was more of a machine learning thing. It wasn't really related to like data analytics, and it's not even my department.
But you did apply your knowledge on data science.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I was in a mentorship, and that's when I started like learning a little bit of machine learning.
You had a little statistic about projected data analyst growth. Is that also, I assume that's also for data engineering and data science?
I'd imagine so. They're still in like the 20%. Like, however, like, you know, I'm not sure with like the rise of like AI and like ChatGPT, how that would affect like jobs like data analysts or data engineers. And I'm not sure if they've even taken that into account. This was just a simple Google search, but literally as we're talking, I was just thinking about that. So, but just keep that in mind. And are you trying to get into like data engineering or?
Yeah, something more on that side.
No, for sure, man. That's awesome.
So
Yeah.
you mentioned this project where you had the star schema and the main fact table in the middle. What does a row represent in that table? Like a loan? I imagine.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. In our star schema, oh God, wait, what is the oh, yeah. So it's every account. That's what every row is in our main fact table. So every customer that we have is each row in the fact table. Yeah.
I had a question in regards to like, you spoke a little bit about like people having grad degrees.
Yeah.
I was just curious, like, if you could like estimate how many, like, do you see it frequently? Is it sort of like, would you consider it sort of a requirement for promotion? Like, what is the role, what is the difference between someone, I guess, with the grad degree, I've heard that it lends to doing more like experimental or like research projects. And are you considering it, you know?
Yeah, no. So I think one good thing is that it increases credibility. Like having like that master's in your name, I guess, like sort of shows like, oh, I've done all of this, and it's like this counts as, and a lot of places do consider like a master's as work experience, right? And have I considered doing it? Yeah, I have. I do have like some recommendation letters, but I don't know. Personally, for me, it's like I want to gain more industry knowledge, and then maybe in the future. But I haven't really put too much thought into it. And was there another question as well that you asked?
Would you say that there's any have you seen major differentiation in roles?
Actually, yeah, no, so that's funny that you asked that, right? So my mentor, right? So I was mentored in machine learning by my, and yeah, no, he's like one of my close friends. He did his master's, I just did my undergrad degree, right? So with him, we're both data analysts, but he works at Google. So it's like, yeah, no, I think like more notable companies do take a look at you for sure if it's like you do have that master's under your name. Yeah.
Can you be a data analysis anywhere, especially at like Kaiser or Sutter?
Yeah, you can be, but it definitely helps if it's like you have domain knowledge. If you understand like what again, I mentioned this before, but it's like, if you show that you, and even when I was looking as well to be like a health data analyst, right? Some of them expect you to understand like medical software as well. And yeah, no, you can do it in the healthcare industry too, yeah.
I was just gonna ask, how have the opportunities been to grow and learn from your coworkers and bosses?
Oh my God. Like, when I started, right, like, I was just like doing my own projects like from the UCI machine learning repository. And then when I started looking at data at like the enterprise level, it's so overwhelming. Like, yeah, no, like when you first start out, like pretty much your coworkers and your bosses, they know so much more than you. They can do so much. They can write like SQL, like with their eyes closed. Like they are so advanced. And that's something you just need to keep in mind when it's like you really just start out as a data analyst. You have so much to learn. Even now, like I've been working for about 6 months, and I'm still like learning new things every day, and I don't expect that to be stopping anytime soon.
When you started to want to prepare for the interviews, how long did it take you, and how hard was it for you to prepare?
I probably applied to like 200 places. I'm not even joking. Like it was like LinkedIn easy apply like on every single one, right? And it is disheartening, right? To like, get rejected, or it's like you don't get a call back or anything. But with every interview is like a chance to learn. Like the way that I saw like interviews was that like, usually afterwards the interviewer would tell me like, okay, so you don't know enough about this. And it's like, okay, cool. So I'll learn more about that. And then it's like you become more familiar, or you become more comfortable with talking.
Did you ever try to apply for a job before you graduated?
I try to apply for anything. Like after college, I was just thinking like, I don't know, credit analyst or like anything in finance. But then I started like learning more about data analytics, and then I just sort of like studied up on it and like built my own stuff. And like, I first started like learning like SQL off Codecademy, and after that it's just I just kept going with it. Right after college, I was just like I think 3 months before graduation, I was just applying to everything.
Yeah. Did you ever had a high GP or something? Because I would.
Hell no. I'm gonna be real, like, no. No, like, yeah.
I know I'm asking all these questions, but sometimes there are some people.
No, I'm gonna keep
that
it
are
100.
not.
Like, yeah, no,
I. Because I'm kind of the odd man out. Whenever I see that Dean's honor roll list, I kind of feel like I wish I was one of them.
No, it's
shiny.
yeah, no, it's
Yeah, no, I used to be CS, but then I was like, this stuff is hard, and then I switched to econ, and then I really, really excelled in there. But yeah, no, GPA is average.
yeah, yeah.
How did you push yourself to keep practicing? Like SQL, like I know, like switching from finance, it might be difficult at first. How do you keep like challenging yourself to build these projects? Because
Honestly, inspiration from like other people, like on YouTube, like you would like look up like, okay, what are some cool data science projects that you could try out, right? And you may not know where to start from. You may not even know what to do, but like really it's just how much are you willing to like dedicate your time just like learning something. And personally for me, I think I just had a lot of fun with it. I really, really enjoyed like querying and just like building new scripts and stuff like that. And I think the more I kept doing it, eventually I did find success.
So you said you've been working for about 6 months.
Yeah.
With these folks. So I guess that it might be hard to gauge just from that experience, but I know part of CS is like keeping up. Have you had to, and you said soft skills are very important.
Soft skills, yeah.
Have you had to make any pivots yet? Have you noticed industry shifts that you've had to adjust to?
Right, yeah. That's a great question. So most companies are trying to switch to like a cloud-based solution, whether it be AWS Redshift or Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure. Since we're mainly like Microsoft like only, we're trying to switch our solution from, right now we have like sort of a hybrid solution. So we have like on-premise data centers, and we also have stuff in the cloud, and we're trying to move more stuff into the cloud. So I'm trying to like study up a little bit more on like cloud computing, and yeah, I've been doing a lot with like data migration, and I want to learn more about like really like how that works in the cloud. So I think, there's been more of a push to like have like cloud-based like solutions. Not only is it faster, but it's like also more environmentally friendly and efficient. So definitely, yeah, with like industry changes, I think more and more companies are going to start like pushing for like possible like employees to start learning about that, or like to have some sort of understanding in it.
Can you still be a data analyst with a CS major?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah. As long as you know, like.
I mean, if we weren't going to be qualified for that, you would have not been learning SQL in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I wasn't a CS major, but yeah, if you had a CS degree, you definitely could be a data analyst. Yeah, because some of the, I'm sorry, yeah, I'll get to your question. Yeah, some of the concepts that you do learn in SQL are, like for example, with optimizing like a data warehouse, we use these things called indexes, especially when it's like we have like billions of rows of data. We want to try and search through all of that faster. So we use like binary search trees to actually search through all like the unique records, or even like bitmap indexes. So there are like some CS like concepts that are in SQL that you do need to like study up on.
How much would you say is the relative, like the ratio scripting to actual like more pure mathematics? And then just to extend that question a little bit further, you said that you received training in machine learning?
Sort of, yeah, it was my old TA. Like I just asked him like, hey, do you think you could show me like the ropes when it comes to like machine learning? And that's like, and yeah, that was really it.
Was it like training a model? Were you dealing with like neuron layers or?
He basically provided me a data set. I don't know where he got it. I was just telling him like, I really hope this isn't like proprietary or anything. And then from there, we try to build like a logistic regression model, trying to predict whether or not a customer is going to default on a loan. And it was like 30,000 rows and I think like 36 fields or something like that. And then from there, we had to choose like, I think it was like 6 or so different fields where we would use those like the main predictors of whether or not a customer is going to default on a loan or not.
So mostly like applied statistics and stuff?
Sort of, yeah, that was more of like the machine learning stuff. Yeah. In regards to your question, math is really on like the back burner of everything, right? You don't really actively think about math when it's like you're scripting, but it does apply, especially like when you're doing things like joining tables together. My boss talks about it. It's like something called relational calculus, and I was like, that's great. I have not touched on it, like, yeah.
How often do you have an assumption and then you run the test and it's not at all what you assume to be? Is that
I'm trying to think of an example. Yeah. Like I make an assumption, run something, and then it ends
Like
up
an-
being completely wrong.
like a preliminary analysis, you build the model and...
I think it's happened too many times that I can't even like, like I literally can't, I don't know what to assume anymore, you know what I mean? But that has happened. When I start off on the initial approach and then it ends up being a lot harder than I thought, or it's not exactly what I was expecting, yeah, no, that does happen quite often. But you just keep on putting your nose to the grindstone and figure out something that works. Because at the bottom line, like, companies need to make money. You know what I mean? Like, and that's just what it is. All right. Well, oh yeah. Also, forgot to mention. Thank Aaron, by the way. Aaron helped out a lot with like advertising and also like formatting of like the final like presentation. So yeah, give it up to him, honestly. Yeah.
The camera is that top one up there. 3, 2, 1. Goodbye! Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Oh man.